you ever opened your eyes in the middle of the night, checked your phone, and there it was again, 2:22 a.m.? At first you think maybe it's a coincidence, but then it happens again and again. It starts to bother you. Why always this exact time? What is going on? Is it spiritual, a sign, a warning, or just your body playing tricks on you? Before we jump to answers, let me tell you about a man named Jordan. Jordan was a young father, 2 kids, busy job, church on Sundays, the kind of guy who prayed at meals and thanked God when things were good. But inside, Jordan was empty. Something in his soul felt like it was slowly falling asleep, but he didn't know how to wake it up. Then it started happening. First once, then twice, then every night. 2:22 a.m., wide awake, no noise, no dreams, just awake. He tried warm milk, turning off his phone, even changed his mattress. Nothing worked. Always 2:22. One night in frustration, he cried out loud, "God, why do you keep waking me up?" No voice answered. No angel appeared. But something shifted. You see, this isn't just Jordan's story. It's yours. It's mine. And if you're watching this, maybe you've already felt it too. That eerie, unexplained waking at a sacred hour. But why 2:22? What if I told you this wasn't random? What if this number, this moment, this hour was sacred? What if God is trying to whisper something into your soul that cannot be heard in the noise of daylight? Here's the twist. We always expect God to speak through thunder, but what if he prefers whispers? C.S. Lewis once wrote, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain." But what if God is whispering in our stillness? In those 2:22 moments, when the house is silent, the world is paused, and your soul is the only thing stirring. Have you ever noticed how still it is at that hour? There's a reason for that. Because spiritually, that's when heaven is the loudest. Let's go back. Look at the Bible. In 1 Samuel 3, the child Samuel kept hearing his name in the middle of the night. He ran to Eli thinking it was him calling, but Eli said, "I did not call." Finally, Eli understood. It was the Lord. That voice Samuel kept hearing in the night, it came in the silence, in the early hours, in the stillness of night. That's when God chose to speak. Now here's where it gets deeper. Why 2:22? Biblically, numbers matter. They're not just digits, they're divine codes. The number 2 represents witness, confirmation, and covenant. Remember, where 2 or more are gathered, that's divine presence. That's agreement. That's God showing up. Now look at Isaiah 22:22. "I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open." Do you feel that? God waking you up at 2:22 isn't a random glitch. It's a holy appointment. He's giving you keys to unlock peace, to shut down anxiety, to open up destiny. But here's the question. Are you answering the door when he knocks? Sometimes God doesn't barge in. He gently taps. At 2:22 a.m., he's asking, "Will you sit with me?" It's not punishment. It's not insomnia. It's invitation. And yet, most of us try to go back to sleep. We scroll, we sigh, we roll over. But what if instead you whispered back, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening"? Have you ever wondered if that lost peace, that breakthrough, that clarity is waiting on the other side of a conversation you keep sleeping through? If God has ever woken you up at a weird hour, type, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening," in the comments right now. Let the enemy know you're awake in more ways than one. What would happen if you stopped resisting those 2:22 nudges and started responding? Think about Jacob in Genesis 32. He wrestled with a man until daybreak. That wasn't just a fight. That was transformation. God changed his name from Jacob to Israel in the dark. Sometimes your identity doesn't shift in the spotlight. It shifts in the shadows, in the hours when no one sees. But heaven is watching. So the next time you wake up at 2:22, ask yourself, what if this isn't a disturbance, but a divine invitation to wrestle, to listen, to transform? And if God is inviting you, what exactly does he want to say? What if he's been trying to unlock something generational in your bloodline? What if he's handing you the key to doors that your grandparents prayed would open? What if 2:22 isn't about sleep at all, but about spiritual alignment? If you're still watching, that's not an accident. You're hungry for more. And that hunger? It's the first sign you're being called. Write, "I'm answering the call," in the comments if you feel that tug. Because what's coming next might be the most overlooked but life-altering truth about those sacred wake-up moments. When Jordan finally stopped fighting the silence, when he stopped trying to explain it away or scroll it away, he sat up. Right there at 2:22 a.m., he whispered, "Okay, God, I'm listening." And you know what happened? Nothing. No lightning. No audible voice. Just stillness. But as the minutes passed, something deep inside him began to stir, like a part of his spirit that had been asleep for years started breathing again. You see, one of the biggest mistakes we make as believers is assuming that silence means absence. But ask Elijah. In 1 Kings 19, after fire and wind and earthquake had passed, God came in a whisper. Stillness is not God's absence, it's his stage. 2:22 a.m. is not about a show, it's about subtlety, about presence that doesn't need to be loud to be life-changing. Here's where it gets real. The enemy knows this. That's why distraction is his favorite tool, not destruction. If he can keep you scrolling at 2:22 instead of seeking, he doesn't need to attack you. You'll miss the moment all by yourself. But what if you didn't? What if you got out of bed, sat in the dark with your journal or Bible, and just waited? What if the silence wasn't empty, but pregnant? Pregnant with answers, with healing, with direction. C.S. Lewis once said, "The silence of God is not the same as the absence of God. He may be silent, but he is never still." And that changes everything, because it means the stillness at 2:22 is not a void. It's a waiting room. You're not being ignored. You're being invited. But to what? Let's go deeper. In Luke 6:12, the Bible tells us that Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. That's not a quiet time. That's an all-night intercession. And when did he do this? Right before choosing the 12 disciples, the ones who would carry the gospel to the ends of the earth. Big assignments are birthed in secret hours. Jesus didn't select his team in the daytime crowd. He did it after a night in prayer. What if God is waking you up at 2:22 a.m. because he's about to trust you with something, someone that could shift generations? But here's the catch. He doesn't shout orders. He whispers assignments. And if you're too busy complaining about your sleep being interrupted, you might miss your mission being introduced. There's a reason why the most powerful revelations in Scripture came in the quiet hours. Think of Paul and Silas in prison, singing at midnight. Chains didn't fall because of a strategy. They fell because of surrender. So when you wake up at 2:22, ask, am I fighting the moment or flowing with it? Sometimes you don't need deliverance from your sleeplessness. You need revelation through it. Now here's something the enemy hopes you never figure out. 2:22 a.m. isn't just a time. It's a spiritual frequency. God is trying to tune you to something higher. just like a radio has to tune in exactly to catch a signal, your spirit sometimes needs to be shaken awake to hear a very specific transmission. Let that sink in. Have you ever had a random idea come to you in the middle of the night that later turned into a business, a solution, a conversation that saved someone's life? That's not randomness. That's revelation. If you've ever been woken up with an idea, a feeling, or a name in your heart, write, "I received the download" in the comments, because you're not dreaming. You're being downloaded with divine blueprints. God doesn't need a boardroom to speak to you about your next move. He needs your attention, and he's getting it at 2:22. But there's a deeper layer we need to uncover. What if that time isn't just about you? What if you're being woken up because someone in your life is in danger, and you're the watchman on the wall? Ezekiel 33:6 says, "But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet to warn the people, I will hold the watchman accountable." Could it be that at 2:22, your spirit is being stirred to intercede? You're not just being invited to talk to God, you're being summoned to stand in the gap for your child, your spouse, your nation. At 2:22, heaven might be dispatching angels, and you're the one who needs to authorize their movement with your prayers. Heavy, right? But also incredible, because that means your night isn't disturbed, it's divinely disrupted. It means you're not ordinary, you're trusted. Type, "I am a watchman" in the comments if you believe God is calling you to pray for others in the secret hours. Let's flood the comments with declarations of people who say, "Here I am, Lord. I won't go back to sleep while someone else suffers." And still, there's one more question stirring in your heart. What if you're not the praying type? What if you're just exhausted and confused? What if you're sitting in the dark asking, "Why me?" And the silence feels more like abandonment than appointment? You're not alone in that either. Even Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, asked for the cup to pass. But he also said, "Not my will, but yours be done." And that surrender is where the power flows. Because 2:22 isn't about how strong you are. It's about how surrendered you're willing to be. So even if your prayer is weak, whisper it. Even if your faith is tired, show up. That's the kind of obedience heaven honors. The kind that says, "I don't understand this midnight moment, but I trust the one who meets me in it." And if you trust him, what could he be planning to birth in your life during these early hour encounters? You've heard the stories of others. You've seen the patterns. You've felt the pull. But what if the most overlooked piece of this mystery, the one thing holding back the full revelation of why 2:22 matters, is something hidden in your own routine? What if the reason you haven't fully heard God during your 2:22 wake-up calls is because you've been treating a divine moment like a random inconvenience? What if the greatest spiritual breakthrough of your life is sitting quietly in your bedroom every night at 2:22 a.m. and all heaven is just waiting for you to lean in? Let me ask you this. What do you do when you wake up? Do you rush to fall back asleep? Do you glance at your notifications? Do you sigh and toss in frustration? Or do you recognize it as a holy moment? You see, most of us want God to move mountains in our lives, but we don't want to get out of bed when he calls us. We cry out for revival, for clarity, for peace. But when he whispers in the dark, we hit spiritual snooze. Imagine if Moses had ignored the burning bush. Imagine if Samuel had silenced that midnight voice. Imagine if Jesus slept instead of praying in Gethsemane. What history-changing moments are you sleeping through? Here's where it gets raw. Your 2:22 moment may not feel like a revival. It may feel like silence, confusion, or even discomfort. But that's how most divine invitations begin. God doesn't usually say, "Hey, I'm about to change your life." Sit up. He simply waits to see who will notice. Will you be the one who notices? Type, "I won't hit snooze on God" in the comments if you're saying yes to the call. Let that be your bold declaration of readiness. Now let me show you something beautiful, and it's been hidden in plain sight. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. What separated them? Preparation during the night. All 10 slept, but only 5 were ready when the bridegroom came at midnight. Don't miss that. He came at night, not during the day, not at the festival. He came in the silent, inconvenient hour. And those who had their oil ready, those who had stayed spiritually awake, went in. The others, they missed the door. That's not a metaphor. That's a wake-up call. Because 2:22 a.m. isn't just about spiritual warfare or personal breakthrough. It's about being found ready. Ready when God calls. Ready when heaven moves. Ready when doors open. It's not about being perfect. It's about being awake. This is your hour. And maybe, just maybe, God keeps waking you at 2:22 because He knows you're meant to carry something bigger. Let's talk legacy. You think your 2:22 moment is about your anxiety, your dreams, your direction. But what if it's not just about you? What if your obedience now is unlocking blessings for your children? What if the generational patterns you've been fighting, fear, poverty, addiction, start to shatter because you chose to pray when everyone else slept? God doesn't just speak to individuals. He speaks through generations. And you may be the hinge, that turning point, that midnight warrior, that whisper catcher who changes everything. If you're ready to stand in the gap for your family, your city, your future, type "It starts with me" in the comments. Let your fingers declare what your spirit is saying, because this is more than a video. It's a commissioning. You're not waking up at 2:22 for no reason. You're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not alone. You're being invited to watch with God. And here's the final truth that could shift everything. God doesn't call the most talented. He calls the most available. He doesn't need your resume. He needs your yes. And maybe that's what 2:22 a.m. is really about. A simple, sacred yes. A moment where heaven looks down, sees your weary eyes open and whispers, "There, that one, they're ready." So the next time the clock blinks 2:22 in the dark, don't roll over, don't dismiss it, don't explain it away. Sit up, be still, listen, because the same God who spoke galaxies into existence is speaking to you right now, in this hour, in this breath. And you don't have to be afraid. You just have to say, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening." Let's not treat the sacred like it's ordinary. Let's not miss divine downloads because we're craving sleep more than revelation. Instead, let this be the moment we say, "I'm awake, I'm ready, and I'm listening." If this message hit your heart, don't just scroll away. Type, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening," one more time in the comments so your agreement is known, so your yes echoes in the heavenlies. And if this spoke to you deeply, share it with someone else who's been waking up for no reason. Maybe the reason is right here. You are not waking up by accident. You are waking up for assignment. Answer it.